This is a production of Cornell University.
My name is Ernesto Quiñonez, and I'm the interim creative director of the creative writing program here at Cornell University. And I'd like to welcome students, loved ones, parents, colleagues, and of course our MFAs. The House of Literature has many rooms, as Henry James noted. Some of these rooms are as elegant and as extravagant, with hanging chandeliers, spiral staircases, candelabras, resembling more a set from the Orson Welles Hollywood classic Citizen Kane. While other rooms are as minimal and as bare, with only a table, 2 chairs, and a lamp, resembling more the television classic comedy, The Honeymooners. Tonight, we will be led inside these eclectically furnished rooms, each room reflecting different styles and visions. There are no aesthetic principles unifying these rooms, because in the end, it is not the room, but how you light it. Many of these writers have moved me, as I'm sure they will move you, because their rooms are furnished with a maverick freshness, a creative disposition that was established within themselves long before they arrived here at Cornell. And speaking for myself, all I did for those who study with me was offer a certification that they do belong in this house that Henry James speaks of. And so, without any further babbling, I'd like to turn the mic over and introduce our MC of the night, who will guide us through this tour, a poet who has a room of her own with a view, Stevie Edwards.
On behalf of the 2013 MFA students, I would like to thank, I guess Ernesto already sort of did, but I'd like to thank all the friends, family, the faculty, and other people who got dragged along to this reading. I am honored that I get to introduce this fantastic gaggle of very good-looking and talented writers that I've gotten to spend the last 2 years getting to know. As a graduating poet, I still can remember the excitement and enthusiasm I felt the day that I got the call saying I got into Cornell. I remember it was early on a Saturday morning. And I remember the phone kept ringing, and I didn't pick it up because I assumed nobody who knew me or loved me would call me on a Saturday morning. And then it was Lyra, telling me I got in, and I just remember I was so excited. At first, it was just the phone call, and there was no paper documentation. So at first, I thought maybe I had dreamed it up in a hungover dream on my Saturday morning, but then it was true, so that was wonderful. Beyond that, it's been great to get to know this cohort of students. I remember when I visited here, 3 of the current students were there too, Chris and Adam and Matthew, and I remember I met them and I thought, yeah, I could be okay going here. And I think for the most part that has held true. I think that with this cohort, we've been very, very lucky to have each other. I heard all these horror stories about MFA programs, about cohorts not getting along, and I was a little nervous about having only 8 people in mine, because if you didn't get along, you would kind of be out on your own a bit. But we've been very fortunate to not just be great colleagues and readers and critics for each other, but to be great friends, and I am so thankful for that. Without me rambling too much more, I would like to again thank the faculty, the English department, and the Pickett Fellowship for allowing us to be here, to be focused on our writing, to not have to have some crappy or some multiple crappy jobs trying to get by working on our first books. I think it's an opportunity that's hard to understand if you've never worked multiple jobs trying to work in writing as well. Without too much further ado, I would like to introduce our first reader of the night, Mr. Christopher Drangle, or Chris Drangle. Most of this is on your program. If you haven't noticed, we have a little thing to follow along. It goes in the order we will be going in. But Chris Drangle is a very well-mannered. I actually didn't think that was that funny. He actually is very well. He's very polite, sometimes at least. I was going to say he's a very well-mannered Southern boy from Arkansas who's incredibly generous and pours a decent drink, from my understanding. He graduated from Tulane University in New Orleans. He has been a legal assistant, a DJ, a copywriter, and a car washer. And his work has been featured in a number of great magazines such as Beloit, Granta, the Kenyon Review, and Mid-American Review. And he's currently working on a novel. I have it on good authority that he looks very stunning in a bumblebee costume. And he just wears those tights so well. You're welcome. Chris Drangle.
Well, thanks, Stevie. I also want to just quickly thank absolutely every single person associated with this program, the faculty, the administrators, my wonderful cohorts past and future, and the people that make the soup at Zeus, and everybody. I mean, if I was not at this program, I would be working in marketing, which is a great job if you work in that industry like my sister does. So I'm going to read something from my novel in progress, and this is from the first chapter, so I don't think it requires a whole lot of setup, but I'll tell you that the protagonist is a middle-aged man who is in this chapter at a party on Halloween, and immediately before this part, he has been bumbling around in the house and stumbled upon his girlfriend, who was in the bathroom doing something she should not have been, with another man who was wearing a gorilla mask. And so that happens, and he goes outside to reflect. And in the backyard of this party, there's this giant, like, treehouse structure that's built between two oak trees with a rope bridge 50 feet off the ground between them. The chapter's called that's louder. The chapter's called The Party. Rudy climbed at the trunk with the handholds. It wasn't easy. A few of the branches bent under his weight, and the bark scraped his side where his box and sweatshirt had ridden up. The box, cardboard and spray-painted red, was part of the Lego Man outfit he had been persuaded to put together at the last minute. For the head, he had drawn a smiley face on a yellow bucket, which now hung from his belt loop by carabiner. The yellow kitchen gloves were nice to have now for the extra grip. Halfway up the trunk, he found a sky-facing satellite dish bolted to a branch, and he sat in it to people watch. There were a lot of fairies this year, both male and female, lots of body glitter, and shirtlessness despite the October chill. He spotted an Elvis, a Castro, a few Ray Nagins, someone he figured for zombie David Lee Roth. The DJ was Tigger, and his booth was a tiki hut on the other side of the yard, and the crowd of 200 or so seemed to be enjoying the drum and synth crap that he had put on repeat. The basic facts of Rudy's life took on sudden and gloomy weight. He was 45 and going nowhere in any sense that mattered. His music career had entered its third decade of stagnation. His day job was the kind normally filled by recent college graduates with majors in photography or literature. Love eluded him, athlete's foot assailed him. On the rope bridge above, the crowd was cheering for a man with a bushy beard and red long johns. The man maneuvered over the net to get in position for a drop to the inflatable landing pad below, and Rudy watched and judged him. He was about Rudy's age and build, mid-40s, overweight. Their beards had the same Appalachian look. Appalachian? I'm from Arkansas. Ozarks. Their beards had the same Appalachian look. The red long johns made him look like a sleazy or maybe just low-rent Santa Claus. And the wobbliness of his legs was not entirely due to the swaying of the bridge. He paused, leaning out over the drop with one hand on the rope, and drained a beer can in one pull, then ceremoniously smashed it on his forehead. Rudy imagined that by day he was someone prone to bringing up art films and farmers markets, and that he criticized frat boy behavior when not engaging in it. He probably worked for a nonprofit, rode a fixed-gear bicycle, and had never held a door open for anyone in his life. He would smile apologetically as the elevator doors closed before you could reach them, but he would never put his hand out to stop them. He most likely had sophisticated taste in cheese. Then Rudy recognized his self-defensive bubble for what it was, and it popped. Who was he, to be sitting there in his satellite dish, criticizing someone for looking similar and having an annoying, invented personality? He tisked himself. Maybe the guy in the long johns was nice. Maybe he was a caring, devoted husband, and right now his wife was somewhere else partying with her friends, and he was here partying with his, but later they'd be together again and would not have to wonder what had happened at their respective parties because theirs was a relationship based in honesty and strengthened by trust. Rudy had really come around by the time the guy stepped off the rope railing. He dangled for a moment by one hand, suspended in the night air, and the chorus of cheers was so positive that Rudy added his own wordless shout of encouragement. He had decided that attitude was something you could control, and he didn't want to feel bad. His job was destroying his soul, his band was going nowhere, his girlfriend was fornicating with a man in a gorilla mask. So what? It could be worse. It had been worse before. It might be better tomorrow. The man let go of the rope, dropped the 50 feet in about the time it takes to say, "Welcome to the jungle," and landed with his legs on the pad and his upper body on the concrete next to the pad. There was either a wet crunch when he hit, or there was no sound over the throbbing music, and Rudy made up the wet crunch later. But the crowd on the bridge was clearly audible, and the "you can do it" cheering warped without pause into a violent howl, like someone had hit a ringing guitar with a baseball bat. On the ground, a multitude of characters rushed to the man and stopped short, forming a tight circle. A Beetlejuice knelt down to check for breath or consciousness. The man lay still. The drum and synth crap continued. Rudy's breath was caught in his throat. He sensed malevolent cosmic coincidence, which was not the kind that he liked. He needed to be walking somewhere else right now, alone. He flipped over the edge of the satellite dish and bumped his way down the trunk. The booze table near the house seemed to have been abandoned. He grabbed 2 bottles, one dark and one clear, and set a brisk pace through the side yard, past a group of smokers clustered near the entrance, then turned on the sidewalk and headed toward Esplanade. The clear bottle was grain alcohol. He set it on the withered lawn of a brown shotgun house. The other was dark rum, and he pulled from it as he walked. Had there been a wet crunch? Surely he couldn't have heard it over the music. But there was a sound in his head, a specific one, and it seemed like the sound of a back breaking. Not that he had heard something like that before. Now he couldn't stop hearing it, and he shivered. He turned right on Esplanade. Sirens keened in the distance, but he didn't know the difference between police and paramedics, if there was one. Still, that meant the guy was alive. A coroner wouldn't need to rush. Although the sirens might not be going to the treehouse, he reminded himself, there were a million other places they could be headed. Maybe, after he left, the guy got right up. Maybe the fall had smacked an errant vertebrae back into place, and now the guy was a better dancer than ever before. But that crunch, a crunching, splatting kind of thing, that was not a good sound. It was the sound of mortal life, human endeavor, the striving for hope and fulfillment, crunching and splatting on the pavement like a Christmas ham tossed out of a helicopter. Rudy knew he was drunk, but that didn't help. It was hard not to think of himself as the ham. Tawny light from the street lamps fell on cigarette butts and weeds coming up through the cracks in the pavement. "Splat," he said out loud. He took a long drink from the bottle of rum, then realized that alcohol was yet one more way people deluded themselves into thinking that anything meant anything. A green metal trash bin sat on the street corner. He gave the bottle an underhand pitch, and it banged off the side of the bin and smashed into pieces on the sidewalk. He laughed, then had a vision of barefoot children running down the street and hurried to scoop up the 5 or 6 largest shards, which he dropped gently in the bin. "I'm sorry, children," he said. "I'm sorry." A block down the other side of the street was the big house that had been under renovation for 2 months. Rudy drifted toward it. It was 3 stories, brown panels and columns like teeth on the facade. A wrought iron fence separated the sidewalk from the side yard, which was strewn with wheelbarrows and sawhorses. That side of the house was outfitted with scaffolding that reached up to the roof, metal pipes, and plywood walkways. Altitude. The fence was easy to get over. His costume box caught on one of the points at the top, but it tore easily when he jumped down on the other side. He ripped it the rest of the way through with his hands and left the Lego torso impaled on the iron. I'm going to skip the part where he climbs up to the roof through the scaffolding, but it's beautiful and gripping. He reaches the roof. There was enough dust and debris on the shingles to make them slippery underfoot. Rudy leaned into the slope and crouched low to keep his balance. At the apex of the roof, he sat down heavily, wheezing and sweating. His beard itched. He tried to scratch it, but the dishwashing gloves made it impossible, so he took them off. At first, he set them down neatly, but then he remembered that nothing mattered and flung them over the side. The yellow bucket still hung from his belt loop by carabiner. He unclipped it and let it roll toward the scaffolding, but the handle stopped it like a wheel chock, so Rudy scooted down and kicked it. The smiley face disappeared over the brink and clattered down. "Welcome to the jungle," he said. The cityscape was dark. There were no stars out, no moon. Back in the direction he'd come from, an elevated series of headlights delineated I-10, winding its way east. A billboard on the side of the highway advertised vodka and happiness. Another was covered in black and white mugshots. The surrounding rooftops made a continuous, blocky silhouette, broken only by the protrusions of taller oaks and palms, black leaves listing in the wind. A few drops of water fell on the back of his neck. It was going to rain, and why not? That's it. I swear I tried to chop that into something that wasn't like horribly depressing. It's worse after that. It just gets worse forever. People like reading stuff that's horrible and never gets any better, right? Everybody loves that. Your next reader is the poet Stevie Edwards, who, as your program will tell you, spent her formative years in Lansing, Michigan. Her work has been published in about 4 million journals and accumulates awards almost too quickly for people who design programs to keep up with. Her most recent accolade was an independent publisher book award for her debut collection, Good Grief. And I would like to mention that Good Grief was published last year when Stevie was a first-year student in this program, and that is a fact that none of the rest of us are jealous of at all in any way. Ladies and gentlemen, Stevie Edwards.